tax stabilization agreement and development
Mr.
agreement.
President, 1 second. Do we have a motion to continue this topic, like the actual hire, because wasn't that part of it? Because we have the executive now, but now do we need to have a continuance of this topic that actually extended?
No, we may not.
Okay.
There may not need to be anything.
Oh.
And then when we hear,
Well, should we just,
executive session, it'll be fine.
but shouldn't we put it on just to be safe? And then if we don't need it, we just say, oh, we scratch it from like we've done before. Because what happens if we come out of executive session and we realize we may need to? We don't have something on this and now we're 4 weeks behind. If this is that high of a priority. So I would say, I would make the motion that we place this as a continuance onto the 11/18 agenda in the event that we need it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
I'm sorry. Mrs. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vannen?
Yes. Next item, discussion by council vote other action on tax stabilization agreement and development agreements by and between the town of North Smithfield and one or more of the following related entities: Green Development, LLC, GDIM 1, LLC, GDIM 2, LLC, and or GDIM 3, LLC, for property located at 1115 Iron Mine Hill Road, assigned as Plat 16, Lot 6. Tax stabilization agreement and development agreement by and between the town of North Smithfield and one or more of the following related entities: Green Development, LLC, GDIM 4, LLC, and or GDIM 5, LLC, for property located at 0 Iron Mine Hill Road, designated as Plat 17, Lot 75. Tax stabilization agreement and development agreement by and between the town of North Smithfield and one or more of the following related entities: Green Development, LLC, and or GDIM 6, LLC, for property located at off North Smithfield Expressway, designated as Plat 12, Lot 136B. Tax stabilization agreement, development agreement by and between the town of North Smithfield and one or more of the following related entities: Green Development, LLC, GDIM 7, LLC, and or GDIM 8, LLC, for property located at off North Smithfield Expressway, designated as Plat 12, Lot 137. Tax stabilization agreement and development agreement by and between the town of North Smithfield and one or more of the following related entities: Green Development, LLC, and or GDIM 9, LLC, for property located at 11 Prince Road, designated as Plat 13, Lot 12. Item 1, discussion by council vote other action on revote and ratification of motion made by Mrs. Zelinski, seconded by Mrs. O'Hara, and voted 4 to 1. Roll call vote. Mr. O'Neill voting no to approve tax stabilization agreement between GDIM 1 through 9 LLC and the town of North Smithfield, with nameplate capacity totaling 38.4 megawatts, with GDIM 1 being 4.05 megawatts, GDIM 2 being 5.85 megawatts, GDIM 3 being 2.1 megawatts, GDIM 4 being 6.6 megawatts, GDIM 5 being 2.7 megawatts, GDIM 6 being 3.45 megawatts, GDIM 7 being 4.2 megawatts, GDIM 8 being 6.3 megawatts, and GDIM 9 being 3.15 megawatts, for a total of 38.4 megawatts, with a tax payment of $5 per kilowatt based off the Office of Energy Resources, and additional payments of $2 per kilowatt in the language of the tax status of the land to be negotiated with the town solicitor and developer. Is there a motion to ratify that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bonioli, is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Second by Mrs. O'Hara and Mrs. Zelinski, discussion.
Mr. President, it almost looks like minutes of a meeting. I'm sure the solicitor may defer to the solicitor.
Mr. President, there was items 1, 2, and 3 of clarification last meeting. An issue was raised, although it's a technical issue. The words "discussion by council vote or other action" were at the bottom of A through C or A through E instead of the top. I think it was raised by Mr. Clifford. Although I confirmed with the Attorney General that it's not a technical problem, but out of abundance of caution to satisfy at least any public concern, I was asking that items 1, 2, and 3 be voted just as they had been voted last meeting, and then we get to 4 and 5, which is the new material. So I would ask you that the 1, 2, and 3 be just re-voted exactly the way you re-voted them last meeting. If you want to make any change in them, you got items 4 and 5 to do that.
So there's a motion and a second for item number 1. Any other discussion?
So for clarification, Solicitor, any member of this council can change their vote at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So can I just want to check what you just said. So 1, 2, and 3, we're voting on based on the past. But if we have any changes to 1, 2, and 3, they're in 4 and 5.
That's exactly
I
right.
just want to make sure I heard.
1, 2, and 3 is a ratification of your previous votes last meeting.
So we could ratify it, but then we could also say
That's
0,
what
5 and.
That's what 4 and 5 is about.
I'm sorry, so at this point, if we're asking for a recall of the vote.
Not a recall, it's just a
Sorry,
ratification.
terminology.
Of the last vote.
Of
And
the
all I'm
last
asking
vote.
you to do is vote as you did in the last meeting. If you want to change your vote ahead, to wait for 4 and 5. That would be my recommendation.
Any other council member can change their vote, correct, at 4 or 5?
Exactly.
Thank you, Solicitor.
That would be my
Right, it's the
recommendation.
abundance of caution.
That's why I put them on there.
Any other discussion? There's been a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
No.
Mr. Vannen?
Yes. Item 2, discussion by council, vote or other action on revote ratification of motion made by Mr. Vadney, seconded by Mrs. Bonioli to amend development agreement to read one-time payment of $287,500 in escrow, $1.2 million with $300,000 in cash and the rest in a bond. No vote taken. I believe that we amended that vote.
That's a number.
That vote was amended. Right, but I'm just saying, so there was no vote taken, so does it need to have any action taken on number 2?
No, because when you get to number 3, you amended number 2. But I
That's the theology that it
Yeah,
happened.
exactly.
So item 3, discussion by council for other action on revoke and ratification of motion made by Mr. Vadney, seconded by Mrs. Bonioli, and voted 3-2 on roll call vote. Mr. Ogier, Mr. Zelinski voting no to amend and approve the previous motion to a 50-50 split, $600,000 in cash and $600,000 in bond, and to have bond agreement reviewed by council. Is there a motion to approve? Or
So
have-
moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bonioli, is there a second?
Discussion, Mr.
I
President.
don't have a second, yeah.
I just want to make sure that through the town solicitor, this is properly posted and we're ready to move forward with this.
Yeah, this is, again, this is item number 3 is just a ratification of your vote last time. That's all it is. Item 4 and 5 is the new material.
Thank you.
Is there a second? I will second. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
No.
Mr. Vannen?
Yes. Item 4, discussion by council vote or other action on the updated language for the above listed tax stabilization agreements and development agreements by and between the town of North Smithfield and one or more of the following related entities: Green Development LLC, GDIM 1 LLC, GDIM 2 LLC, GDIM 3 LLC, GDIM 4 LLC, GDIM 5 LLC, GDIM 6 LLC, GDIM 7 LLC, GDIM 8 LLC, and/or GDIM 9 LLC with a nameplate capacity totaling 38.4 megawatts, with GDIM 1 being 4.05 megawatts, GDIM 2 being 5.85 megawatts, GDIM 3 being 2.1 megawatts, GDIM 4 being 6.6 megawatts, GDIM 5 being 2.7 megawatts, GDIM 6 being 3.45 megawatts, GDIM 7 being 4.2 megawatts, GDIM 8 being 6.3 megawatts, and GDIM 9 being 3.15 megawatts, for a total of 38.4 megawatts, with a tax payment of $5 per kilowatt based off the Office of Energy Resources, an additional payment of $2 per kilowatt.
Mr. President, if I may, this item is, reflects the package that was provided to you for tonight's meeting that has all the changes that you discussed. Mr. Rusini worked on these changes with me pursuant to the council's direction, and he'll walk through those changes on those. So at this point, item 4 is just about those changes. Item 5 is for anything else you want to do. So let's not get into anything beyond these changes. Number 4, that's what number 4 is about.
So item 4 is to review and vote on the changes in language that we wanted made to to these documents 2 weeks ago.
Exactly right. So
Or other action.
I get that, but I'm gonna ask, the reason why I created number 5, Mr. Vice President, is so we don't confuse the record like it got confused last meeting and I had to have a re-vote and ratification. If we just stick with item 4 on those changes, Mr. Cassini will go through it. If they reflect what you wanted, my recommendation is to vote to approve those changes. And then number 5, you can do anything else you want. That's why I put number 5 on. And I would ask that you do it that way so that you don't, and by the way, this would help the clerk too, because one of the reasons we had a problem with the motion, the clerk and I were having trouble getting clear what the motions were. It took us a lot of work to get those motions recapped. So that's the reason why I took the time to break it down this way. And I'm sorry to be so verbose on this as well as my explanation, but I think Mr. Messina can walk us right through those changes and they hopefully will reflect what you directed us to do.
Mr. President, through you to the town solicitor. Solicitor Iglesias, you've read these.
I have.
You have, and you are comfortable with the language in here as I have read them myself. Comfortable, maybe a question on my part, but thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
In fact, the reason why I wanted Mr. Grassini to explain them, I told Mr. Grassini one of the reasons what I want to do is, by his explanation on the record in these minutes, he and I have agreed that that's going to clarify the intent of the agreement. So between now and the next 20 years, whoever fighting about what the intent of a paragraph is, will use these minutes as the evidence of our intent, our legislative intent. Does that make sense? And I think Mr. Cassini said that's not hard to do in the 60s. So I'm going to ask, with the council indulgence, for Mr. Cassini just to walk through those highlighted changes, and then the council will do whatever it wants.
So can I ask just one question though? So if we're using these minutes, I know sometimes our minutes are vague, right? It's only a couple sentences, so how detailed is this section of the minutes going to be? Is it going to be everything he says as if it was not clear?
What I'm going to do is, when Mr. Grassini explains the sections, if we have any, most important thing is, if there's a section change, if there's a question about that, I'm going to ask him to agree what that change means.
So can it say intent?
Yes.
Something like that. So we know clear as day 20 years from now or 30 years from now, if I want to go back and look at the minutes from this meeting, when we're talking about decommissioning, I'll say, oh yeah, that's right. Mr. Busini said the intent was, and not interpret it.
Well, not just, again, what I was hoping to do is have Mr. Cassini explain it and just ask him to acknowledge and agree on the record that this is our intention. That's what I was hoping. I don't want to get overly caught up. Councils don't really create legislative intent if we want to be hyper-technical.
No, I just wanted to know.
So if you indulge me on this, you'll at least have a clear record, Mr. President. And then obviously the council can do whatever it wants, but I just want to give you a clear record.
Mr. President, just for the record, we do not have a, I don't know, is it the term certified stenographer with the state of Rhode Island? We have the town clerk. We approve the minutes. Yeah, try to capture as much of this as you can. For the record, Mr. Cassini, if you don't mind, what the solicitor said, would you verify that that's your intent here this evening?
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the council. My name is Stephen Brusini, Brusini. I'm sure you're all sick of me at this point. I'm an attorney in Providence representing the developer GDIM 1 through 9. Mr. Iglesias gave a nice summary a couple of weeks ago when we were here, I believe, on the 21st. The council did ratify by vote the tax stabilization and the development agreements for each of the 9 projects. There were some changes that were discussed, they were verbally agreed to, and the purpose of this meeting was to give the solicitor and I time to come up with language that memorialized and embodied the changes that the town had voted on in language that the solicitor was comfortable with. And that's what we've done, and I think he's spoken already. He is comfortable with the language. All of the changes I'm going to go through with you are just reflecting what happened at the last meeting. There's really nothing else.
Okay, before you do that, just kind of a housekeeping thing. Is the full council in agreement that GDIM 1 through GDIM 9 are all identical to the tax stabilization agreement, other than the nameplate number and any numbers that are associated with that? We all in agreement with that, so we don't have to go through 9 different ratifications.
Thank you, Mr. President. It saves us a lot of time.
Yeah.
And what I will do in that regard,
How about, Mr. President, but the actual wattage will be described 1 through 9, correct?
Correct. And to that point, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, what I will do is, for the record, I think it will help all of you, is there was an aggregated payment, one-time payment of $287,500. All I did is I took the capacity of each of the 9 projects, divided it into the total of 38.4, created a percentage, and divided it. It all adds up, but I will, just so you have it on the record, I will mention what the dollar amount is for each one.
And thanks to Council Bob Moley that pointed that out last week. Thank you.
So if I can proceed, I'll start with the tax stabilization agreement. On page 1, there were only 2 changes. I just changed the date, so we had a blank. The date will actually be once the building permit is issued and the appeal periods have lapsed. And the only other change was just fixing a typo, a superfluous "the" in the 5th whereas clause.
A little slower, Counselor. So you're changing the date on page 1, is that correct?
Correct. In the first paragraph, Mr. Vice President, all I did was change the date, and in the 5th whereas clause, on the 5th line, there was a superfluous "the," which I deleted.
Yes.
And the date that will be put in there will be the date when you actually have approval to begin the process.
The final building permit and the lapse of all appeal periods with no appeal having been taken. Correct,
That's
Mr.
the date
President?
that's the date that's put in there.
Correct, which is why I just left it as a blank since we don't know when that's going to be. Council's permission, I'll move on.
Are you okay?
On page 2, in the first 2 paragraphs, by far the most robust discussion and the greatest volume of discussion at the meeting 2 weeks ago was that there may be ambiguity in terms of what the town's power is for raising real estate taxes on property on which a renewable energy project sits. So to reflect that, I simply removed in these 2 paragraphs references to the real property taxes. In section 1, I removed language related to tangible personal property tax because that's reflected in greater detail in section 5. At the bottom of the page in section 2.2, at the solicitor's request, we redefined additional tax payments as simply additional payments, and that carries over onto page 3 in half a dozen or so different spots. The greatest revisions were made in section 5. In discussions with the solicitor, the request was, rather than simply talking about taxes as a whole, meaning tangible taxes and real property taxes, the request was made to separate them. The law being very clear, as is stated in section 5.1, what a municipality can and can't do with tangible personal property taxes. So that section simply states it. This agreement is dispositive. It makes the decision as to what's going to happen with tangible personal property taxes, which is the current law and the current OER regulations promulgated from the current law. New section 5.2 was to capture the fact that right now there's pending litigation and there is at least some dispute as to what taxing powers a municipality has with respect to real estate on which a renewable energy resource sits, whether that's increasing a tax rate or creating a new classification or creating a new assessment. The position of the developer and of OER, the Office of Energy Resources, is that the $5,000 per megawatt or $5 per kilowatt is an all-in payment for tangible taxes and real estate taxes. There are several municipalities involved in litigation who are taking the point that the statute and the regulations only relate to tangible taxes and don't relate to real estate taxes. And then there are towns, for example, such as the Town of North Smithfield, which are taking the approach of, we don't know, let's wait and find out. And I think that was really the genesis of this language. So what the language says in section 5.2 is that whatever power the town has with respect to taxation of real estate on which a renewable energy resource sits, not really knowing what that may be, but whatever that power is, nothing here, nothing in this agreement is intended to change it. All it's saying is, to the extent that the law changes, or there is a clarification in the law by either legislation or by litigation with a judicial decision that's binding on this project in the town, then to the extent that real estate taxes change related to, because of, arising from the renewable energy resource, then there'll be a dollar for dollar reduction in the additional $2,000 a megawatt, the additional $2 per kilowatt that the developer offered. And in a wordy way, that's essentially what section 5.2 says. That is the intent, although hopefully the language is specific enough. The solicitor and I spent a lot of time trying to make it as precise as we could, so there really is no ambiguity. I don't believe there's ambiguity as it's written, but that was the intent.
Mr. President, if I may, sorry.
I just wanted, while we're right on that point, because the council was very particular about this, with regard to the underlying real estate, the town will have the power, and they agree, to tax it in ordinary course as we would tax any other real estate. It's about the fact that the renewable energy is on the property, changing the assessed value or the classification or the tax based upon that tangible is what is up for litigation and subject matter of potential legislation. And if that changes and says we can do it, then we have to give them a credit again out of the $2 extra payment that we get. Does that make sense?
I agree with that.
Is that our understanding, Mr. Cassini?
It is indeed.
On the other hand, with regard to the property, if it's, right now, some of this property is farmland and has a certificate from GDIM and that assessed value, as long as they qualify for that, they're gonna get taxed at that rate. If the certificate's removed and it goes back to commercial value, then it's gonna be a higher rate if a certificate were removed.
For manufacturing.
Whatever their plan is, but that's got nothing to do with the items that are attached to the property. And that's kind of what we're trying to capture here. I think that's what the council understands, and I think we agree to.
And to the solicitor's point, at the very end of section 5, there's language that I deleted, which was really superseded by the language at the beginning of new section 5.2, which says the town has whatever taxing authority it's ever had. No,
Yeah,
so
we're not
it's
on law
very good.
44-27-